I have a problem with the 8th.
Why?
I have another meeting in Dedham,
We've got a meeting in Dedham.
but I suppose I could, I can't go to both meetings.
Well, do we want to meet on the 15th?
Is Brush Hill Road actually advertised for that date? Is it a public hearing on the 8th?
It is a public hearing. I did not write the ad yet. I
Okay.
had every intention of writing it tomorrow morning,
But
submitting
we
it
could,
tomorrow
we
afternoon.
So
could,
we
we
can
could,
change the
Ed
date.
could do his, the video thing. We don't have any continued hearings, do we?
We have one
It's
starting.
just
We have
Starting.
one starting, but we don't have any continued hearings, do we?
No, it has not started yet.
Unless we continue, 36 to 50, that's been continued to the 8th, correct?
You've got the list.
So we're
Right.
about, we haven't physically continued it to the 8th yet, but we're about to.
Right.
So
do you
yes,
want to
we will
move
have
it
a
to the
continued hearing.
8th?
That's what you said.
I know that, I'm saying, do you want to move the meeting to 2 days before? No, you can't do it on that Tuesday. That Tuesday's the 6th.
Well, the
and
8th,
Yeah, the 6th is
we
election
can
day.
do it on the 8th, and then you can watch a videotape of it.
Or I can forego the meeting and other meeting. Okay, I'll work it out.
Okay,
Alright.
I'll work it out.
that would be good, just
The 8th.
because it's kind of
Yeah, I understand.
Thanksgiving
All right,
time.
yeah, okay.
Speaking of which, what do you want to do about our second meeting that
2:39.
month? Can we skip a meeting?
I'll send it to you electronically.
Um,
Good idea.
What time?
We are going to
6:30.
discuss that on the
I
8th,
realize you're something, thank you.
or we'll discuss it next week. But people should consider about our second meeting in November, and we'll see if there's anything that really requires attention.
Okay.
And if not,
We'll only have one meeting in November?
we'll only have one meeting.
What will I do on a Thursday night?
What will you do?
Really?
Now, take a look at these minutes. The minutes for September 18th, even though I was only in the audience, I read them and they looked fine to me.
I had one change to those minutes on the top of the second page,
On the 18th?
on the 18th, yes, where it says, Member Ennis raised questions about the costs involved in building a bridge. I
September
actually,
18th, did you say?
September 18th. So on the top of the page, I actually had questions about the presentation of the costs involved, not the actual costs, not the costs involved in
So
but
add the words
presentation
about the presentation of.
yes.
Got that?
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, and so, any other views? If not, someone should move to approve these.
I
So moved.
There we go, I'll second.
Okay, so moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And I'm abstaining.
That's right. yeah.
Now,
7.
we have another set of minutes.
27?
27th, and on Town Planner's report, it said, "A recent Superior Court decision ruled in the town's favor."
Don't worry, don't worry.
And I would be interested to see this Superior Court
What
decision.
page you
I
want?
don't think so.
First page of September 27th.
The wind turbine case, a recent Superior Court decision ruled in the town's favor. I'd like to see this decision.
First
Okay.
page.
Okay,
Okay, I'll send it out to you.
What was the town's position, to put up the turbine?
what did it say?
No, it was the arbitrator hasn't ruled yet. Superior Court was, Quarry Hills appealed the town's wetland bylaw, and Superior Court ruled in favor of the town, upholding the town's position on the.
So why not add, ruled in the town's favor on certain wetlands issues?
Fine.
So
I'll
would
take
you
that
add
from
that,
you.
Gene? On certain wetlands issues.
Bring it back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What page were you
On page 1, the town planners
Three-quarters down.
report,
on? Okay,
the wind turbine case, a recent Superior Court decision ruled in the town's favor on certain wetlands issues.
okay.
All right. Then, on page 3, end of the first paragraph, the board voted all in favor of a favorable recommendation. Add the words of a favorable recommendation.
Favor of, in favor of a favorable?
Yeah,
In favor of a favorable recommendation, yes.
Okay.
I assume you want to do that at the end of the next paragraph as well?
Assistant Lieutenant.
Yes, yes, put that, do that exactly. At the, you've got that, Gene,
I
at
do.
the same stuff.
Okay.
Okay, with those few changes, any other thoughts?
I move the minutes as amended.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's a unanimous vote. Now we get to citizen speak, and you've got 25 minutes, Don.
Use it wisely.
Please do.
Yes. Take as long as you need.
The town planners report, however, we will hear from if you don't take the full 25.
Are you ready? So, thank you. My name is Tom Callahan. I live at 16 Orono Street, a town meeting member from Precinct 4, and I'm here wearing a hat tonight of representing a group called Citizens for Milton Community Preservation. We have formed around the referendum question number 4 that's on the ballot this November, and we're the Yes on 4 committee. Essentially, our official name is Citizens for Milton Community Preservation. I just wanted to briefly take the opportunity. I know many of you are very aware of this, but just to talk briefly about the Community Preservation Act. Obviously, it's something all voters are going to vote on this fall, and some people are aware of it, and some people are not so aware of what it contains. But town meeting last May, as you're aware, voted overwhelmingly to put it on the ballot in front of voters for November 6th. It's a state law that was passed 12 years ago, actually, and it is a dedicated surcharge on the property tax. In Milton's case, we're proposing a 1.5% surcharge, and it's for dedicated uses of open space, parks and playgrounds. We'll get into each of these: historic preservation and what is the legislation calls community housing. This town raises through the surcharge a local match, which if Milton, if it passes, it would raise approximately a little over $700,000 a year, and then is eligible for a state match. The state will match that based on how much revenue goes into the state matching pool each year. Last year, the match that the average match, or the minimum match actually, was 26%. This year, that match is actually stayed the same. It's 26% as well. It's projected to be increased next year because the state legislature, with the support of the Milton delegation, voted a one-time appropriation of $25 million to supplement the state matching revenues that come in every year. So our conservative estimate is Milton, if it passes, would probably in the first year get about a 40% state match. It might be north of that. It might be 45 or so. But we expect towns to receive approximately 40% state match for next year. But even without that special appropriation, you're talking about a state match probably in the 20-25% range if no special appropriation were made. But it has been made, so that's good news for Milton if we adopt it. There are exemptions for one of the things. This is one of the things that makes this not an ordinary surcharge is, or unlike a Proposition 2.5 override, for instance, is that there are exemptions broadly available for seniors and for those on fixed incomes, so that a single senior living alone that makes $68,000 or less would be exempt from the CPA surcharge. a senior couple, a two-person senior household making less than $78,000 would be exempt. And then a non-senior, a family, making, a family of four, for instance, making less than $78,000 would also be exempt. So it's a low or moderate income exemption as well. So it, that was designed that way, so it wouldn't be a hardship on families or seniors that are living on fixed incomes. So that's I think a very intelligent design of the law. It also has a further exemption for all residential taxpayers. The first $100,000 of their property value is exempt. So everybody would not be assessed a surcharge based on the first $100,000. And so that is a meaningful exemption as well that reduces the impact. The median house in Milton is estimated it would pay about actually $86 a year, or approximately $7 a month. The other, yep, in terms of the relevance of the planning board, you guys are the experts, obviously, on development issues, but we've seen other towns across the Commonwealth, 148 communities have already passed the CPA. Many of our neighbors, Braintree, Quincy, Randolph, Stoughton, Easton, Wellesley, Newton, I could go on, Situate, Hingham, so lots of South Shore and Metro West communities, and lots of Milton's neighbors are already benefiting from the law. Many of those towns have found it very helpful in the development process. One of the things that people have mentioned in town, I know, is that it could be used to preserve the facade of the old theater, the East Milton Theater. That's the type of thing that were redeveloped, not redeveloped into a theater necessarily, but redeveloped and you wanted to preserve that historic facade, you could do that. You could, obviously this is a lost opportunity, but the St. Elizabeth Rectory building would have been a fantastic potential use of CPA dollars, whether that be for any of the three. Actually, it could have been historic preservation, clearly. You could have preserved some open space on the site, and you could have done community housing on that site as well. And there have been many projects across the state where they have actually used CPA funds on one site and used them in all three major categories. The last thing I think I would point out is that there was an amendment this year to CPA. In addition to the additional $25 million that the state put in, there was an amendment that allows the towns to use CPA money for existing parks and playgrounds. So prior to that, you had to acquire with CPA funds a new park or playground or open space parcel, and then you could further improve it with CPA funds. They lifted that restriction so that existing parks and playgrounds and open space that the town owns, so Kelly Field, Andrews Field, those could receive capital improvements. They can't receive maintenance dollars, you can't mow the grass at Kelly Field with CPA funds, but you could redo the softball field there, or what other capital improvement might be needed throughout town. So that could be a huge benefit to, I know, Strath Parks Department and an ongoing source of capital improvement money for the town. So that's basically what I wanted to say, and we appreciate. I know a number of you as individuals have been aware and supportive of this act, so we appreciate that. And
as a board, it seems to me we voted approval of this
Prior to town meeting.
prior to town meeting. I don't know that you were party to that vote, Mike. Do you have views of on the CPA that you want to, I mean, we could re-vote, or we could just stand by the old vote.
Yeah, I really don't care for the increase in the tax. I don't. I think that it's the town of Milton collects sufficient taxes as is. I think it's kind of a strange situation. I know it's happening and it's common, but it seems odd that the state insists that you tax the people more in order to benefit from some state money. So-
All right, yes.
I don't know that it's state money, it's actually your money being returned to you. If you bought a house, you paid $40, that goes into CPA. If you refinanced your house, you paid $20 into the CPA fund. What you're doing is you're getting your money back. If you were a city, you're eligible for CBDG,
Community
Development Block Grants.
But you still have to,
As a community, we're not,
but you still have to
CDBG.
tax the people more even to get their
to
money
get
back.
back that money. So it's.
I mean, when you
it's a
say,
return on the
when you say
money.
we're getting our money back from the state, indirectly, anything that the state has is our money.
But I believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that, obviously everybody's already paying this money when they refinance or buy. That goes into a pool. If we don't accept the CPA, those funds are distributed among the other towns. So somebody else is getting the money that's been raised through Milton's property, those surcharges on our refinancing and our buying of our houses. So
Well,
which
isn't
is
that
also an
money,
interesting
Emily,
concept.
sorry,
Yeah.
isn't that money, when you sell your house, you are assessed a certain amount of money? Is that over and above, I don't understand, Tom,
It's not on the sale of the house, it's
like an excise stamp?
It's the recording of deeds at the registry, really, so as Bill said, various fees are assessed. The only, I think, friendly amendment I would say, Bill, is some of those fees, like the $40 fee, I think $20 goes back to the CPA trust fund, and the other 20 goes to fund the
Somewhere
registry. or
Right.
But, so when you refinance or when you get a mortgage, generally, those are the two things, or it might be a few other things that trigger a recording fee, but those are, that generates, depending on obviously mortgage activity, that generates, I think it's never been lower than $26 million a year. And it's been as high as almost $50 million a year in the refinance boom years. So that fluctuates, and that money is distributed, all of that money every year is distributed to them, right now, 148 communities that pass CPA. So somebody did an estimate, I think they estimated in the 12 years CPA has been in effect, Milton homeowners, home buyers and homeowners have paid about $3 million into the fund, and obviously none of that money has returned to Milton.
Home
because-
buyers or sellers?
Buyers, because that's who's recording.
Oh, so it's the buyer?
Yeah, one of the things you may be thinking about, when this originally was proposed 15, 20 years ago, well before it passed, it was proposed as essentially a transfer tax.
Right.
And that did not survive the final legislation. That part is not part of the legislation. So the way they fund the state matching pool is
Recording the
is
mortgage?
exclusively through, or has been exclusively through these fees on recording a deed at the registry.
The deed.
What you just said, in 12 years, Milton has put $3 million into it.
That's not my figure, but that somebody did that research, yeah.
The figure you gave us earlier at about $700,000 a year, in 4 years, Milton will put in $3 million just to try to get a portion of the $3 million that they already put in, that they're not gonna get all of anyway.
But we'll continue, I mean, it is the state law, every community in the state.
Well, I realize what you're saying, but that's $3 million over 12 years. If you pass this 1.5%, you said that's gonna take $700,000 out of people's pockets a year. So in 4 years, we'll have spent $3 million just to try to take advantage of a smaller sum of money.
In 4 years, we would have raised locally close to
Spent.
$3 million, and probably would have received, conservatively, say, at a 25% match rate, we received
Yeah.
about $1 million, almost $1 million in state matching funds.
So Selectman Hurley had a meeting I went to probably better than a year ago, and he made a point and I do applaud him in being very upfront and honest on it, and he immediately said, this is a tax, don't question yourself about that, this is a tax. And he also said that the matching funds had been going down significantly, that originally it was almost $1 for $1, and because of the economy, it's been going down, and some of the more recent towns that have voted on it, for instance, Canton apparently decided that it wasn't, for lack of better words, as profitable as it used to, so it's just not worth, like I said, putting out $3 million out of the taxpayers' pockets directly to try to recoup a much smaller amount of money.
Well,
What did Canton
the-
do?
The state match has gone down, that's clear. It's not because of the economy and not because of the, it's really because of the popularity of the law. The state, the first 5 years, I believe, every community got 100% state match. So whatever they raised locally, that was matched dollar for dollar. But that's when there were 30 communities in the law, 40 communities, 50, you know, it's grown very, very steadily. Now there's virtually almost half of the communities in the state, 148 communities are in the state. 9 more have it on the ballot in November. It's a very popular law. It continues to be popular. Canton has turned it down twice. There are communities that have turned it down certainly, but we have found that most communities do pass it, and some communities, no community. This is also a unique law in that communities can opt out of it after 5 years. Again, differentiating it from a Proposition 2.5 override. No community has chosen to do that yet. A couple communities have lowered the surcharge though, from 3% to 1.5%, or from 2% to 1%, or what have you. But it's a very democratic law in that if the voters decide to lower the surcharge after 5 years, that's allowed, and it goes back to the ballot, and the voters get to choose.
Just again, on the last point, I think he indicated that it hasn't gone down because of the economy, but yet we sat here and we said that the income it generates is from buying and selling of houses. And I don't think there's too many people here that's going to say that we've generated a lot of revenue in buying and selling of houses in the last few years.
We actually had a very good year this past year.
In Milton?
Yes.
Not statewide, probably.
No, statewide, because the refinance activity. This has been a historic refinance year, so that generates huge deed recording fees. So this past year has actually been a very healthy year.
Now, Emily,
Just a couple of questions. The first, you actually answered, which was the ability for the town to, after 5 years, to opt out or to reduce the amount.
Or
I
increase,
noticed,
too.
or increase, yeah,
Yes.
that's true. And we're starting at the halfway level. We're
Yeah,
starting at 1.5%.
1.5%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed too online on some of the questions going around that there seemed to be a misunderstanding on how the historic preservation works. So I'm going to let you know my understanding and see if
Okay.
that's correct,
Okay.
which is a number of people thought if the funds were spent for historic preservation, that would take the properties off the tax rolls. And my understanding is that the town can actually use CPA funds to help private owners with historic preservation. As you said, say the facade of the old movie theater, or there's the Swift Hat Factory, for example. If that were redeveloped, the town could contribute funds, but that doesn't take it off the tax rolls. It actually remains in private ownership. Okay.
That is absolutely correct. There's been many private developments, private owners that have utilized the CPA funds. Basically, you put a preservation restriction on the property, so that the town gets something, obviously for its investments, but they also, it's a tax-paying property. It's not a nonprofit. It doesn't have to be a town-owned or a nonprofit-owned tax-exempt property by any means.
But then the follow-up corollary to that is it could in fact be a town-owned property. So for
Absolutely.
example, the fire stations, which would qualify as historic buildings, and some of what we could use CPA funds to help with that restoration.
And I think many people are, thinking the fire stations would be a great use, whether it's Atherton Street or the Central Fire Station, or all three would qualify.
Okay.
But that would be, at a minimum, give the town one more significant option when they consider what you know, whether it's next year or, you know, 5 years down the road, but when they consider what they need to do to upgrade those stations. So
Thank you.
That's right.
Well, when I am down in Wareham, I watch some of the local boards, and the Community Preservation Act, the boards in Wareham and Marion, and community preservation funds are always being used to do something that's interesting and would never have happened without it, and has been a huge benefit to both of those towns. And I look forward to getting some of the same benefit here. So,
Now, you also just highlighted a issue. I think now that there are 148 communities out there with experience with CPA, it is a great resource to a town like Milton if we do adopt it. We can learn from Wareham and Easton and a variety of other communities that have done some very creative things, with the money. The select woman from Easton was upstairs at the Board of Selectmen a couple of weeks ago talking about how they took the shovel factory, and it was just 40B development, and got what they wanted out of the 40B development, which is a great story, right? The initial developer proposed a lot more units. And Easton came in with CPA dollars and used that to get fewer units, which is what the town wanted. But they got some affordability, and they got the development of a historic shovel factory done the way they wanted to. So they used it as a key negotiating tool to end up with something that was a win for the developer, certainly, but it was also a win for the town and the town's residents and the town's interests. So I think there's a lot of examples, like you just said, and I think the town can benefit from the 12 years of experience of the communities that have gone before us.
all right, well, thank you. Now, Mr. Clark, you've had 20 minutes to consider. Oh, we're going to, now we're going to, before we hear your report, we're going to continue the hearing
36.
for site plan approval for 36 to 50 Elliott Street until
6:45 on November 8th,
6:45 on November 8th.
correct?
Yes, you've got them, yes.
I've got them. I'm
Is
just making sure.
everyone agreeable to this?
Yep.
Okay, let's just vote it.
Move to
Okay.
continue the hearing.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. It's continued.
What's continuing? I was trying to listen to the sound. I'm hearing an echo.
36 to 50 Elliott Street
Oh, it's
is,
continued? Okay.
yes, and you're in favor of that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's another unanimous vote,
And I heard today from Ned
yeah.
that the facade with the balconies has a whole new design, which looks
Thank goodness.
much better.
Excellent.
Thank goodness.
That's
No,
very
no,
good.
no.
I've been dealing, let's see, I put my selectmen issues and planning board, planning department issues together. I've been dealing with the town's portion of the 131 demolition. I wrote the invitation for bids, which went out. The bids were due yesterday. Selectmen will vote on that number tonight so that the town meeting has a number to deal with next Monday. I appeared before the Conservation Commission last week for a request for determination of applicability, because it's one step that we need because of the proximity of the river to that particular piece of the building. East Milton Parking and Access Study. I filed with Mass Highway and the Mass Highway District Office 6 a project need form and a project information form. I met with Mass Highway Planning, Mass Highway's federal coordinator, and the district office yesterday with Mr. Hurley and Anne Marie Fagan and Mr. Lynch. The project has now been accepted by the district. We're now working on what we need to do to get to a design engineering plan. that we're in the review process. With the zoning articles that are coming before planning board, before the town meeting on Monday, I've been working with the warrant committee and with town council on the different red line versions to make sure everybody understands what the changes are from the original submittals to the final acceptance, both by the planning board and the warrant committee. Master plan committee met Tuesday night. I actually went Monday night over to Stoughton to see how they were dealing with theirs. Tuesday night here, and I'm sure Emily will give you more later. Today, dealing with the home program, town of Milton actually is using some of its home money, which is federal money from HUD, to create affordable housing units in town. The ones we're doing here in town is we have a 5-bedroom house that is for the severely handicapped that are in the Work Inc. program. Those 5 bedrooms translates into 5 units on the state's subsidized housing inventory list. The wind turbine, dealing with the issues, we need new poles along certain portions of, 1, the asphalt access road, and 2, the area down by the gas pump station. We had to have it dig safed, and we're dealing with some of the logistics of a transformer site with NSTAR. Green communities, I'm trying to finalize the grant program. The grant program gave the town $157,100 from the state. From it, we got about $20,000 back from NSTAR in other grants. And from it and other efforts that the town and the schools have engaged in, we in 4 years have almost cut our energy usage in half. Hasn't done much for the bill because of the demand rates for the different buildings, but the consumption part of it is way down. 36 Central, I've been dealing with the affordable issues with DHCD, the developer, and Milton Housing, who's going to be the contractor for Brenco on the lottery system. Dealing with the landscaping that I think one of the abutters came and, was making comment to you at the last meeting, if not, it was the meeting before, and dealing with the developer to get that taken care of. FEMA, at the last town meeting voted to make some changes to the wording for houses in the floodplain. And as we do that, there's also new floodplain maps. I suggest to anybody that is getting a letter from their bank telling them that they're in a floodplain, that they have to now buy flood insurance, that they go to the town's engineering webpage. There's a specific page just for floodplain issues. Alan Bishop put one together. He's done a really good job on it, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Other than that, I met with Tom Hurley and some of the St. Elizabeth's people. We can talk about that later in the agenda. Dealing with proposed developments and the proponents, reviewing submitted projects, writing the legal ads for some of the projects that have come in, dealing with the stormwater issues with DPW and the Board of Health, working on some individual property projects for the ZBA, and reviewing overall the ZBA cases as they are necessary for you, so that you, should one of them come up that you should be interested in, you'll know. I think
Okay.
that's enough.
Now, at 7:45,
That's a
we
week.
have on the agenda 333 Hillside Street, Bosworth subdivision. And as I read this, it's continued till next week.
Yes,
Okay, so
there are legal issues that need to go back to Mr. Bosworth's lawyer.
this has to do with the
The easement
And the
that was submitted
easement,
to
the
us.
lawyers have given a number of comments, and they're
Yes.
going to go to Mr. Bosworth's lawyer to see if he can attain
Yes.
whatever lawyer,
Satisfaction
whatever
on law.
lawyers attain, satisfaction, exactly. Okay, so at 7:45, I guess we'll continue that hearing. Or let's continue it now.
Can we do that? I think we
Charlie's?
have to wait. Yeah,
No.
don't we have to wait till 7:45?
You can say it now, you can say it then.
All right, at 7:45, Ed, say that it's been continued, but let's vote to continue it now.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. All in favor of continuing it?
all right.
Aye. Okay, it's continued.
And that's 7:15, just so people know.
At 7:15,
On October 25th, it's continued to
Next
7:15.
week.
Next week,
next Thursday, October 25th, at 7:15.
yes.
Got it.
Okay. Now, the next item is the Hillside Street open space special permit, for which I am disqualified due to a badly written state law.
That's one way of putting it.
So, I will step down.
Good evening, Marion, Mr. Hannigan, and everybody in the room. Good evening and welcome. We hope to come to a solution to this issue tonight. So we're going to have a 2-minute time limit on discussions of questions or statements. 2 minutes, please, to the point. And we've heard a lot of these things over several times in different variations and so forth. So I'd ask the attorney for the applicant, Mrs. McGetrick, would like to say something to start us off, Marion.
Thank you. Well, I think we've been discussing this open space development permit for land off Hillside Street for about 7 months. And a variety of questions have been asked, and I've attempted to answer them to the best of my ability. I've probably written too many memos to the planning board, but that's how I've chosen to do it. What I've done for tonight is to think about what conditions might be part of a special permit if the planning board were to grant the permit, and also to go back and review the draft easement and utility covenant that I had prepared last April when this process began. And this is what owners of the new lots would have to agree to when they buy their lots. So I have provided a draft list of conditions and a revised draft covenant. And I've actually tweaked it a little bit since yesterday, I think, or whenever it was that I sent it to the town planner. So I have more copies here. And there are extra copies, so I'm going to hand these over, but then the extra copies should come back here so other people can pick up a copy and look at them.
So can we be sure that the Mr. Bobrowski gets a copy, please?
Yes.
Okay.
But we can pass one back, there's plenty of copies.
Also, Mr. Ventel and Mr. Thank you. Mr. Ventel and Mr. Wilkie should have copies too. I'm sure there are others too, but
Yeah, oh yeah.
at least those names I mentioned.
There's a covenant, and there's some suggested conditions, so there's 2 different documents.
These are all different than what you gave me yesterday.
Slightly different, yeah. I'm sorry, it's a lot of wasted paper, but. And so I just have a few general remarks.
May I just say one thing, Mrs. McGetrick? Bill, the new utility and access easement that I just received has a slight change in it that Mary and I discussed this afternoon, so this, the one you said to me
I've
is,
never, all right, because I went through all of what I had. And
I have the,
latest-
this is the latest, not the one you told
Yes,
me, okay?
correct.
In any case, these are just suggested conditions. The covenant is a draft, because if you adopt, if you vote for this permit, the covenant is subject to the approval of the planning board, so you'll be reviewing it anyway, and you could be making other suggestions and changes if you want. I think this application basically comes down to the following elements. We have a landowner who owns a large lot a distance back from Hillside Street, who owns a driveway connecting that lot with the public road. In 1946, when Spafford Farm not Spafford Farm, but when the farm, which this was originally, was divided up into lots by Mrs. Spafford, the driveway was created as access to all of the lots, including the back lot. And buyers of those lots received deeded easement rights to use the driveway. The lot owner, who has owned most of the back parcel for over 40 years, has always believed that he had the right to use the driveway to get to his property. Because the land remained vacant, the family has not actually used the driveway, while the other lot owners have been using it for over 60 years for foot and vehicle traffic. Everyone who's using it now has, we all recognize, has become used to having exclusive use of the driveway. And that's, in part, what's made this so very difficult, this application. And during these hearings, many ideas have been brought forward to use alternate routes and not use the driveway. And I understand the intent and the purpose of all the neighbors to try to have us do that. I wanted the neighbors, however, to try to understand that that proposal, in the view of the owners of this property, becomes just a way to deprive them of the use of their own driveway. It's just, there's not been a meeting of the minds on this issue in any way. And this means that the owner is very intent on keeping those rights and using them in some way, and that hasn't changed. And during this period of ownership for the owner, the town created an open space development bylaw. This was to encourage the development of larger lots, retention of the rural appearance of neighborhoods. In 1982, when that bylaw was passed at town meeting, residents of Hillside Street wanted the bylaw because they felt that new subdivisions built under the subdivision control law offered too little flexibility to protect the rural character of their neighborhood. The owner of this back lot sees the use of this bylaw and his ownership of the driveway as a natural and logical fit. And it has been a very bitter and difficult struggle for this owner and for the developer, with whom he has a purchase and sale agreement, to be criticized for simply following the available bylaw to develop his own property using his own driveway. We have tried to invite a dialogue with neighbors to find mutually agreeable concessions and conditions, and we've certainly had a lot of discussion at these meetings. And any that I've been able to identify from my notes from all these hearings, I have tried to put into the list of conditions that I've provided. But still, almost all of the discussion has centered on the use of access routes. You know, apparently on the assumption that the same open space development that we've proposed here would be built using a different route. There really has been a total absence of communication with the applicants, and as a result, these ideas are floated and they're discussed in the neighborhood, but there's no input from the applicants. And that input really would provide some balance to those discussions that's been missing. Because I think, you know, the first thing the applicant would say on that premise that I just mentioned is that I'm not gonna build the same development, because if you tell me not to use a driveway that I own, and I have to buy something, or I have to pay a lot more to develop a different route, it's gonna cost me more, and so I'm gonna come up with a different type of development strategy. I mean, it isn't what we wanna hear necessarily, but it's the reality. That's the way everybody is thinking who's on that side of this question. The best, most beneficial result in the end is going to come from the developer seeing it as something both beneficial and reasonably profitable to him, and the neighborhood finally seeing that there are positive benefits from this proposal. After listening to all this discussion, the applicants still believe that their proposal to create these 3 large lots and access them from an existing driveway, as is required by the open space bylaw, makes the most sense as a way of developing the property. Limitations on the paved width of the driveway, the appearance of the driveway and so forth, are limitations that are actually for the owner a form of concession. The owner has a right to use the full 30-foot width of the driveway, but he'll agree to use much less. You don't get these concessions if you have an A&R lot being developed or a subdivision use necessarily. And creating additional driveways or roads into this site isn't going to preclude the continued use of this driveway and perhaps the full width of this driveway. With this application and this permit, you can control the future use, at least for the benefit of those back lots. That is a very good reason to go ahead with this proposal. Even so, even with the difficult discussion that's taken place here, the applicants are continuing in good faith to seek out buyers who may wish to use 2 of these lots together. Buyers who like these lots, we're finding out, are buyers who may have a horse. I mean, we kind of laughed about that in the summer when I was talking about it, but there's more than one buyer looking at these lots who wants to have a horse, and they love the location because it's so rural, and they like the idea of going up and down the driveway with their horse. They want to have a barn. The whole package is what they like. They like the same rural setting that residents here like and want to continue with. So overall, I just say this development will work to the benefit of abutters. It will be a low-intensity use. It will have less impact on wetlands than any other uses that could occur. In every respect, this proposal fulfills the requirements of the open space development bylaw. Large lots are created. Access is by a driveway. The design of the driveway is safe, and it can be traversed by cars and larger vehicles. Yet still, the design is close to the present rural appearance of the driveway. The new houses will be located as far as possible from neighboring properties and in back of properties on the driveway now. The proposal represents good planning because it minimizes development. It minimizes impact on the infrastructure of the town. Yet the houses will generate substantial property taxes for the town. Reducing the number of lots protects wetlands from adverse impact. And creating this type of lots here off Hillside Street continues the traditional rural character of this area. The driveway will be safer and easier to maintain than it is now. Existing residents will have the opportunity to connect to new water and utility lines if they choose to. And fire protection will be greatly improved with the addition of 3 fire hydrants and a new water line. This development proposal is not a threat. It's a great opportunity for the neighborhood and the town. The planning board should approve the permit, and the developer and the neighborhood should make a fresh start and work together to create the best possible result, including encouraging the configuration of combined lots for buyers who want barns and horses. Thank you. I'm not going to list the conditions. I assume that you may be discussing those, and it would take a long time to read through that whole thing, unless you want me to do that now.
No, Mary.
Yes, and I mean, I will conclude. It should be sort of obvious from what I'm saying, but the applicants really would like you to decide, whatever your decision is, they'd really like you to decide tonight.
We hope so. Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Balsi, do you want to come up and say a few words?
Mr. Chairman, I represent the Corliss family, but there are many other people from the neighborhood here. I would defer to them, and if I could speak at the end.
Okay, very good, yep.
Thank you.
We have a 2-minute time limit. Please come up and just state your name and your address and your remarks. And some of them we've heard before, but it's all right to say them again. So, who wishes to come up? Yes, sir.
My name's Jim Corliss. I live at 151 Hillside Street. I just wanted to discuss the financial aspects of this proposal. We really haven't heard much about that over all the testimony we've heard. I'm going to present some figures to you. They're rough calculations, but I think that they're enlightening. This development has the potential to produce significant revenue. I had an informal discussion a couple of months ago with Bill Clark, and I asked him what these houses might sell for, and his answer to me, I'm quoting him, was well north of $1.5 million. That seemed reasonable to me. I'm going to guess that houses envisioned for this development are not going to be 2-bedroom capes, but rather larger homes with multiple bedrooms and multiple bathrooms. I'm not a real estate appraiser, but I looked online and I saw a couple of houses that might give us an idea of what these houses might possibly sell for. There's a house on 4 Stonebridge Lane, 4-bedroom, 4 acres, asking price $2.75 million. 28 Dudley Lane, 2 acres, 4 bedrooms, $2.95 million. Now, we don't have any idea what's going to be built behind on the Fandry land. We don't know what market conditions would be like when these houses, when and if the houses get built. The 2 figures I mentioned to you, those are asking prices. We don't know what these houses are going to sell for, but let's assume that the houses sell for 70 or 80 or 90% of asking prices. We can guesstimate that the houses, if in fact 3 houses are built back there, would be selling for $2.2 to $2.5 million. So that would mean that the revenue potential of this development is around $6.5 to $7.5 million. So it's a significant figure. The bridge. I'm not an engineer, and I know less about bridges than I do about real estate appraisals. And we heard a testimony all over the place, and we heard an engineer, for example, testify with real precision that the bridge would cost $180,000 and change, and he had inflation escalators and comps, and it was very precise, but he didn't include bridge footings or permitting costs, which are really unknowable and significant, so his testimony really didn't tell us much. We could hear testimony for the next 3 months about the cost of bridges, and the figures would be all over the place. I've been looking online how bridges are constructed. Basically, the way they're done is the bridge platform is fabricated offline and dropped in place over pre-constructed bridge footings. I'm going to guess that the cost of those bridges might be, it's really unknowable, but if we use a figure of 180 grand for the bridge platform, 150 for the footings, 150 for permitting, we're in the $450,000 to $500,000 range. If we compare that to the revenue stream that this development can produce, it's not an unreasonable figure. I want to take a look at this thing from the point of view of the developer for a minute. If this project is accessed through Ford Ranch Road, it would enhance, in my opinion, the revenue potential of the project in a couple of ways. The bridge would act as a focal point for the development, and the revenue from the sale of the houses would be higher than if access is achieved through a driveway. There are a number of problems that access through the driveway will negatively impact on the selling prices of the houses. For starters, any potential appeals it would take years to resolve. Also, any buyer, or more to the point, any potential buyer's attorneys would have serious concerns about clouded maintenance agreements where some people sharing the driveway are obligated by a covenant to participate, others aren't. All those types of things are going to translate into lesser sale prices of the houses. The figures I'm using are very approximate, but I think they're reasonable and workable. Again, looking at the project from the point of view of the developer, I think the board would be doing the project and the developer a big favor by denying access through the driveway and encouraging access over the lot on Ford Ranch Road. At the end of the day, I think the revenue generated for the developer would be higher. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corliss. I just wish to remind additional speakers about the 2-minute rule.
Did I go over two?
2.5, I think. Good job, though.
I was waiting for the hook.
Good job. Who's next? Mr. Ventel, come on up.
Hi, Ed Rentel, 110 Ford Ranch Road. And I'd like to speak quickly about the concerns of myself and my neighbors down on Ford Ranch Road, and that is the possibility of flooding on this because of this project. I would like to show you some photos that I took in 1998, and this has happened several times since. If we can pass this around to the members of the planning board. That was one flash flood in 1998. We had another one about 4 years ago. That's on Ford Ranch Road. And Ford Ranch Road has storm drains. Ford Ranch Road has curbs to keep the water in the road, whatever. The planned road or driveway that would be behind us shows no plans for storm drains. They talk about a water line, they talk about utilities, but there's no real plan about controlling the flooding. And we will be flooded down on Ford Ranch in our backyards. Quickly, this is the plot plan, whatever, that shows the proposed area that's to be developed. What isn't shown are the elevations of myself and my next door neighbor, Lloyd Wilkie. I went to the town hall today and I got the elevations for our yards. And what is shown here is something like 100 feet to 90 feet. When you get down to our properties, we're in the 75 to 80 feet above sea level area. If you compare this plot plan that I got from the town and the elevations of this proposal here, they are not correct. Where he shows 100 feet above sea level, it's actually about 80 feet above sea level. To make it quickly, we're talking about a change in elevation from where they proposed the new driveway at around 150 feet above sea level. And when they get down to our property, when they get down to our foundations, we're talking an area around 75, 80 feet above sea level. You're talking about a 50 to 60 foot difference in elevations. And when you take a look at these photos, you can get an idea of what water can do when it gets an opportunity to really get going. The development, I am sure, is not going to be just a little path cut for a driveway. I'm sure they're gonna knock down the majority of the trees and the vegetation in the whole area. It just multiplies the chances for flash floods. And that's basically, I'm talking for my neighbors down at the bottom of Ford Ranch Road mostly, and we are extremely concerned about flooding. I don't believe there's been any sort of a flood risk assessment that's been undertaken for this project. This is an upland development. I went online, I learned all these terms, and I believe this would be called an upland development, and we're a downland residential area. And it's funny, one of the #1 causes of flooding, one of the #1 natural disasters in the United States is flooding. And I believe this project, as is we're gonna become a victim of flooding. And that's all I have to say.
Mr. Ventel,
Thank you.
do you have anything else to talk about?
Not at this time, sir. Not
Thank
at
you.
this time.
Thank
And
you.
by the way, thank you for coming up and walking the property with me.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, I just
Yes.
can't help but be curious. Is there a literal wall or drop right there?
Yes, there is, yes.
There's a wall.
There's an ancient stone wall that's on the back property between, of the Wilkies and myself. And immediately, there's a 6 to 8 foot fall into our backyards from where that stone wall is. There's an immediate drop off. If you take a look at those these elevation grades. You can see, I guess every one of these lines represents 1 foot, and you can see that it falls off quickly. Like, here we are at 80, 75 on my property, on Lloyd Wilkie's property. We have heights of 85, 80. When you get back up to the top of the property where this development is supposed to be, you have an elevation of, say, 150 feet. It's steep, and water is going to run downhill, and it's going to run down at a much greater rate when this development starts to commence, when it commences. Just for the fact that they're gonna be clearing the woods, there'll be nothing to absorb the water. You people know, you've dealt with this before. We are going to be flooded, and it's something that has to be considered in this project.
Thank you, sir. I'm just gonna ask Mr. Wilkie if you wish to say something, Lloyd?
Well,
Come on up.
I can add very little to that Leonard discussion, but like I said last time, I've had 2 situations. One where my cellar was flooded over one bad season, actually came in the back cellar door. And then, of course, one year the brook went up and tore my driveway up, which is above the level of quite a bit level over the conduit. So I can't add too much more to that, except that the gentleman talked about a bridge. I would abut the bridge, and personally, I'd hate to be looking at a bridge when I come out my back door every day. It wouldn't be too pleasant, but that's not gonna add too much to the discussion. I know that's just a personal feeling, that if the road is put in there, it would cut down our pleasure of living there, because we go at the back door and the driveway's right next to that bridge. So I can't add much more to it than Ed had. Those are just sort of personal feelings.
Do you think most of the water that you see is coming off of this area?
Yeah. I don't know where it came from, but it came in my cellar door.
Just for the record, Mr. Wilkie and Mr. Rentel live side by side, just, so that's what, they're talking about the same water. Okay, thank you, Lloyd.
No, worry about it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, who's next? Yeah, okay, come on up, man.
Street was, in his words, a stretch. That DEP will always consider the overall impact of the project. A short span of development is preferable to a long span of road. The Conservation Commission is best equipped to identify the optimal location for a short spanning bridge, thereby mitigating its impact. And with proper engineering and placement, spanning bridges can be most successful only presenting shading impacts and no other wetland alterations. I respectfully ask the board to consider the consequences, hardships, and potential liabilities that approving the pending application will inflict on my mother and her neighbors. Construction is projected to last a minimum of 3 years. If this applicant does not have the budget or experience to develop this unique property from Ford Ranch Road in a safe, sensible, and compliant manner, please deny this application and permit another proposal to come forward. Sincerely, Victoria Jepson.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Who would like to speak next?
Good evening. My name is Jim McDonough, homeowner at 147 Hillside Street. The neighborhood has been discussed over and over because of the uniqueness of the setting. It's a fantastic gem of a neighborhood in our town, and it has been right along, and obviously we'd love to expect that it will continue to be that way. I think it's safe to say that there's no one in the room here who's in favor of this. We're here because the energy that we bring is to try to present our case strongly so that the planning board will look favorably upon some of the suggestions that we make and would like to make. I think in thinking about this and thinking about some of the changes that would be part of this process, if we stand out on Hillside Street and look into the driveway location as it currently is structured, this proposal results in interfering with the existing stone wall in such a way that every step of the way, the character of the neighborhood is affected by what might seem like fairly small pieces of the puzzle, but when they add up, it becomes a significant change, and the character of the neighborhood is altered significantly. Just as the applicant has relied on the expertise of their advisors, we have relied on ours as well, and the focus that we have is the fact that once the stone wall's moved, then the tree specimens on either side of the current entrance will be damaged to the point of those trees being lost within a few years, as well as the gecko tree on the Bresnahan's property and the hedge that stands in front of our property. The last meeting or two, there was some discussion of the need to pave and to have streetlights. And so if you can get a visual picture of the impact of that, all those steps being taken, then it's very difficult to make the case that the neighborhood character has been maintained as much as we all like it to be. Back when this started and the Conservation Commission hearings were underway, we made the case early on that the Ford Ranch Road access was the most logical access, given the fact that it seemed to be giving everything that was necessary and everything was being sought after by the applicant. We then invited Marion and the applicant to our home to make a presentation to us to give us some details about what it is that they're proposing. And during that meeting, we made it clear that what our focus was finding whether Ford Ranch Road is a viable alternative. And as we all have heard from the very beginning, that the costs are prohibitive, which of course is something that would make it difficult. But again, I think through some of the research that's been done here by the neighbors, it's been made clear that that perhaps is not the case. And it clearly makes Ford Ranch Road be the more preferred access to the piece of property. If we need streetlights, Ford Ranch Road has streetlights. If we need hydrants, Ford Ranch Road has plenty of hydrants. If you need something paved and wide for emergency vehicles, which certainly makes sense, Ford Ranch Road is 40 feet wide of asphalt, with, at least for the first half, no neighbors abutting within elbow room of the road itself. That being said, I think that you look at the drawing, it's parallel, it runs parallel to the driveway, it accesses the same place that your proposal has been talking about. Either way, getting back there, from our perspective, obviously, Ford Ranch Road seems like the preferred way, the more sensible way. But as Mr. Rentel has pointed out, we also need to be sensitive to the impact it has on the abutters on Ford Ranch Road. And from some of the inspections that have been taking place here recently, it appears as though there's some significant considerations that need to be looked at carefully on the impact that it would have on those houses, regardless of how access is achieved to get there. It sounds at least as though some new things have been brought up recently that maybe could have been things that were discussed back in the Conservation Commission time. I don't know that, but I just think that we also have to be sensitive to the fact that we don't want our neighbors down on Ford Ranch Road being burdened by this with no due recourse after something has taken place. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Who else? Who's next? Yes, sir, come on up.
My name is Matthew Grady.
Sit down, please, sir.
Sure.
Thanks.
I am a friend of Ed Rentel. I was called out to his house probably 5 or 6 years ago because he had an attic full of flying squirrels. I own and operate an animal removal company. And while I was on site performing the work, I noticed several different species of animals in his backyard, namely deer, coyotes, a fisher cat, and a raccoon, which is extremely rare to see all in one visit while on someone's roof. So I asked him about it, and he said that he had seen numerous animals in the backyard constantly. I went for a walk with him, and couldn't believe how overrun the habitat is in that area, just because the lack of habitat that the animals have, the lack of food. And I set up some cameras, just some motion activated cameras, just to see what type of pictures I could get and to see just exactly how many animals reside in that piece of land, both on the high ground and on the edge of the swamp. And I was amazed at the number of animals in that area. And my concern with this building project is that there's very little habitat left, as we all know. Everything is built up in the area. This is one of the last remaining pieces of high ground besides the Blue Hills. And I'm here just to ask you to consider the wildlife and the animals that are in the area. The first gentleman that got up and spoke was talking about real estate prices and money, and unfortunately that seems to trump all in our society, including common sense. So I just came here today to ask you to consider the fact that the animals in the area have extremely limited resources as far as food goes, and that's why every bush in the area, every piece of every plant anyone puts out for landscaping is immediately eaten by deer or another animal that no longer has a place to reside. But I brought with me some pictures. Anyone wants to see them? Just some of the dozens of coyotes and deer and fisher cat and all types of animals that call the place home.
Are these all the same different packages?
Yeah, they're all from that piece of woods, but they're all different types of animals, foxes and coyotes and feel that the impact to this area, to these animals, would be significant if this piece of property is developed.
Is that all, sir?
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, those are fisher cats. And a raccoon. Is Redmond there and then there's Fisher Place?
Okay, who would like to speak next?
Be here tonight, but his son's graduating from Navy boot camp tonight, so he couldn't. He had 3 comments to make, and that was, one, at the last meeting, I know Alex made a comment that when I went to the site, I shouldn't have taken the developer. I didn't. I took the fire chief and the lawyer for the developer. 2, when the fire chief, he made comments about the 12-foot wide. He said the 12-foot wide is wide enough for his vehicles, and he said that the improvements to the area are going to be the improved water line now provides hydrants to an area that is currently not served, and he's getting 3 hydrants out of it. So those were his comments.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, sir.
Steve Bresnahan, I live at 159 Hillside Street, and my lot is at the corner of the development as
not kidding when I say right down the bottom of Ford Ranch. And it was only for a period of 15 minutes or so. It was a short time, but it was a lot of water. And the other point, which I've not heard brought up at all, which had nothing to do with these floods, you know, on an event-to-event basis, is, and this can be verified with town engineer's office, but right in front of Mr. Rentel's house, there was a sinkhole. So there's all sorts of water.
Take responsibilities with regard to lot owners 1, 2, and 3. It does say that the other lots, without legally defining them, I don't think that that's adequate, shall without limitation have the rights set forth in paragraph 4, and those rights purport to give the owners 1, 2, and 3 the right to sue each other if any of them fail to pay the bill. But you have the odd result here that if the Corlises want to sue the owner of lot 1, 2, or 3 to pay the bill, they can, but the owner of 1, 2, and 3 can't sue the Corlises if they don't pay the bill. It's a mismatch attempt here, and it just doesn't work, and I think that there has to be some recognition of that. So there's no indemnification clause, there isn't any responsibility for pro rata payment. It's botched, I think. Number 3, the most important point that I want to make is that the 1,900-foot driveway, in my opinion, at 12 feet wide, I was shocked. After Mr. Lynch made that eloquent closing statement last time in which he reiterated that his wife had been taken away 12 times by ambulance and that he would need to see a wider road in order for him to have a clear conscience to vote for this. Page 3 of their suggested draft permit says that they're going to have a 12-foot wide paved road, that it's going to have no lights but reflectors, and that it will go 19, I think one estimate I've heard, and I'm not verifying any estimates here, but I've heard one 1,950 feet back into the woods there. I really appreciate the chief's enthusiasm here. You asked how it was unsafe. When the chief says it is, you say it's unsafe. Your regs say 650-foot limit and over 20 feet of pavement. That's what you've decided in your subdivision rules and regulations. They're on the record as being unsafe. You have to grant a waiver to get beyond that point. Now, I think Mr. Houston testified for Mr. Corliss a couple of meetings ago that he was the advisor to a number of municipalities, as am I, and I can't imagine a town that would allow 1,950 feet on a 12-foot wide pavement to service 3 homes back in the woods. It's just unfathomable to me. And my last point is perhaps the most important one, and I think Mr. Daniels expressed this. I want to express it somewhat differently. This application has no as-of-right position, none. They have a single-family house lot, as Mr. McCardle just said.
And that single-family house lot with a swimming pool and horse barns and whatever else you want to put back there is easily a $6 million piece of property in your town. So I don't feel bad if you deny this application. I'd like to be in the owner's position. I'd love to have that piece of property with its land value. They have the burden of proof of showing you that this does not cause substantial detriment. They don't have a right to a special permit. It's a completely jump ball decision on your part. You have absolute discretion. And under the circumstances, with no as-of-right position, I fail to see why you would give them a special permit that represents a windfall. That's essentially what it is. They have a right to 1, they want 3. In order to get 3, they have to earn it. But it's not like they have a right to 6 and you're going to give them a special permit for 3. That's a good decision. That promotes good planning and open space protection. They have a right to 1 and you're going to give them 3. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Ms. McKettrick said when she was concluding her remarks that the development of this property in the way proposed on the plan was the natural and logical step going forward. This is completely illogical from my perspective. This is a remainder lot. It's the last piece left. When the property was developed all around it, somebody should have planned it out a little bit better. And now that they didn't plan it out better, they want to use the open space bylaw to try to get what they really aren't entitled to. So I would urge you to deny the permit, send a message, come back through Ford Ranch. We'll take our chances then. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Marion?
I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'd like to address a few points that were made, and I also have to answer some statements that were incorrect. So I'm going to start backwards. Thank you, Mr. Bobrowski, and a couple things I did want to correct, since I didn't read our suggestions for special conditions on this permit, and the special conditions are the meat of the permit. So there's pages of special conditions that I propose, but some of the ones I want to point out are, in response to Mr. Lynch's concerns, we have proposed a 20-foot width of cleared land with a 12-foot pavement, and the edges of the pavement, the rest of the cleared land, to be covered with a special material that's a mesh material that's weight-bearing but allows grass to grow up. This was suggested to us by the Conservation Commission as a good solution to maintaining the narrower appearance of the road, but having a safe additional driving surface in case there was a need for vehicles to pass each other in this situation. And I have a special condition written that requires that type of width and that type of surface. The only place where it's narrower, where we said only 14 feet, is in front of the McDonough property, because the McDonoughs have planted hedges in the right-of-way, and they provide privacy to their home, and we, feel that that's a significant issue for them, and we feel that an effort should be made to at least we're certainly willing to cooperate if the planning board wants to try to keep those in place. So that's one point. Let me just move backwards here. I haven't spent a lot of time discussing the bridge issue. I don't believe we ran out of time last time testimony was introduced. I'd just like to say briefly, generally I agree with the analysis that was provided by Mr. Corliss. The bridge estimate was for a bridge deck, and we're willing to say, okay, let's say that estimate is fairly accurate, that a bridge deck just to cross a brook would cost $180,000. Then you have to pay for the bridge abutments, then you have to pay to build the road through the wetland, and then you have to pay for replacing or replicating any wetlands that you may affect as you do that. So, and you have to pay a considerable cost for permitting, because you have to deal with special permits when you're crossing a waterway. So the estimated cost, I think Mr. Corliss was talking about, was around $500,000. That is a very substantial cost. The way you calculate profit, I guess, profitability of a development of this sort is that you think about what the lots can cost, not how much the houses are going to cost. And when you add a substantial cost, you do add to the cost of the lots, which makes them less marketable. There's a certain price range for a lot in this area, and it's been studied very carefully by the applicant. And that's why the proposal has come to you in the form it has for only 3 lots, because it works financially. These are marketable lots. People want them. We have people who've already said they want them. So, okay, just to address the comments about the covenant, if the language is botched, it should be rewritten. I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. The covenant that's been written is a draft. The planning board will review it. I presume they would have town council review it. And any and all comments received that say there should be improved language, I'm sure, would be taken to heart, and there will be rewriting, I imagine, of that covenant. The covenant language that I wrote was taken from the covenant that the planning board applied to the 2 other open space permits that has granted. This is a particular situation because the new part of the driveway, which belongs to the new lots, would be the entire responsibility of the new lots. The old part of the driveway would remain in the same status it is now. The only difference is the new lot owners would also contribute to the cost of maintenance for that part. And perhaps the covenant's not properly written to express that, but that's the intention. Just to go back briefly to the comments on Ford Ranch Road, first of all, the overall flooding, which comes down from the Blue Hills. We have been aware of this issue from the very beginning of this application, and it was one of the primary reasons that we chose to try the special permit application for open space development. Because we know that there's a stream there. We know that when the homes were built on Ford Ranch Road, that was before most of the wetlands regulations, and it was certainly before the Rivers Act. So much of the filling and the change that occurred when homes were built on Ford Ranch Road wouldn't be allowed today. But that's true of so much development, but it is the case. And as a result, the tremendous amount of water that comes down from the Blue Hills has to find a place to go. And right now, it's going down that stream, and it's landing on that lot that's part of this site that has all the wetlands on it. And that lot itself, actually, the stream was relocated when Ford Ranch Road was built, so that it's actually now closer to the edge of this property that's subject to this application. So there is no question that there is a lot of water traveling down that road. And you know, again, I think I've said this many times, the advice we received from our wetlands consultant was that invading those wetlands and changing them was going to be a substantial harm to the wetlands issue that would be very difficult to overcome. And in contrast, the driveway that the applicant owns would be a much better access to the lots from a wetland standpoint. The other flooding that was referenced, just briefly, I'd like to say that you know, just to understand this property, and I went up and walked this property again yesterday or the day before. It's about to fall over, but anyway.
Mr. Hannigan to the rescue.
As I've said from the beginning of this application, this area has uplands. That's why we're proposing these sites as building sites, the buildable lots. And they're uplands, which means that there are hills at the edge of all the uplands, and water travels in various directions because of that. When a new lot is created, the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction, and the Conservation Commission requires whatever changes need to be made in the course of construction to prevent additional runoff from going onto adjacent properties. It's also not legal to allow additional runoff to go onto adjacent properties. It's not, development does have an effect, we all know that. Every time you do development, you take away more of the land that absorbs water. But legally, you're not allowed to put more runoff on. Furthermore, if you go up here and you walk this site right here, what you see is, indeed, these lots have backyards that go down towards the street. This is an upland here, but the slope of the land is in this direction. And so if there is, I'm not an engineer or geologist or anything, but even looking at it, and looking at the fact that there are no pathways in the leaves and in the dirt that look like there's a lot of runoff, you know, going in any particular direction. Right now, the water's being absorbed up here and it's running off. But when it would run off, it would tend to go in this direction, I think. And that's certainly the way it looks to me, just looking at it as someone who's not an expert. if there's runoff here, it's much more likely that it's coming from this direction because there's a huge flow of water coming down here. So, just my observation going up there and looking at it. The statement that was made by one of the Jepsons, that the land should go to conservation, I've said it from the beginning. It's available. If someone would like to buy this land, we will, not we, because I don't own it, but the owners will sell it. And they would be delighted to do so. It would be a great thing if this land could be preserved. But nobody has come forward and offered to do that, and it's an expensive proposition because it does have development potential at this time. It is worth something. But we are very open to that. It just hasn't happened. As far as the concern that the planning board should not rely on promises, I couldn't agree more. That's why a special permit is a good tool for the planning board, because you can write conditions. You can ask, you can be very specific in the conditions that you put forward, and the developer then has to say, can I live with these or not? The developer doesn't like the conditions and you approve the permit, he can appeal the permit on the basis that he can't abide by the conditions. But that's the whole point of doing a special permit, that you can, if you wanted to, you could say, there is no stone wall proposed here. But if there was, you could say it has to be a natural stone wall, it can't be more than so many feet high, and so on and so forth. So there are things that, a lot of conditions that you can impose. The mention of homeowners association, I think it's good that it's been raised. I think it's an issue. When you have a covenant, such as the one that's proposed for these new lot owners, the lot owners should form a homeowners association, and perhaps insurance is one of the reasons that you should do that. Larger developments do it all the time, and you've seen them, I'm sure, for other developments that you've approved. The new lot owners should have a homeowners association. I think the residents of the driveway, the abutters, should have a homeowners association. They don't have to. State law, gives them all a right to put their utilities under the driveway. It gives them a joint obligation to maintain the driveway, but they have to figure out how to do it. And sometimes that becomes a subject of litigation, and it has to be worked out. But that's, state law does impose that obligation on everybody who has a right to use a private way. On the trash collection issue, it's not defined, but it's mentioned in the conditions as something that would need to be worked out with the Department of Public Works, and that's the wording that you used in your other open space bylaw permits. The fact is that at least the company that the town uses now has smaller vehicles that they send out on we have 75 private ways in this town, many of them narrow, many of them longer than this one. And sometimes they send their private truck down the private way. Other times, the agreement is that the trash will be put out at the entry. In this case, it's possible that what would be decided would be that beyond the cul-de-sac, which is a new area, the new residents would be able to put trash, and a small vehicle would come in and collect the trash there, and would collect all the trash going back up the driveway at the same time. But there is no plan yet for that. It's left open, but that's likely what would happen. And it's done in a lot of locations in Milton. The comments about wildlife habitat, again, I think it would be great for this to remain as conservation land. The entire Blue Hills has a high population of the animals that were mentioned. Sometimes, it's not possible to keep land completely as open space. It would be nice to do it. I don't really see that that's particularly an issue here. I think would be the case in any open land anywhere around here. The changes at the entrance, the fire chief and maybe Mr. Hannigan can make sure I'm saying this correctly, has requested 4.5 additional feet on the right side of the driveway. So 4.5 additional feet means moving some stone wall at that side of the driveway. And that was in his, the way he explained it to us was that our fire vehicles approach from 2 different fire stations for Hillside Street. And if that side of the driveway were given a more open curve, it would enable a fire truck coming from that direction, that is from Route 28, to enter faster and get to a fire faster. Now, if you drive up and down Hillside Street, you will see numerous driveways that have smaller entrances and narrower entrances. And you'll see some that look just like the way the driveway is now. So, you know, I'm not the fire chief. So when I look at the entrance, it's got a curve already. I think it looks pretty good for safety purposes. But the fire chief said he thought it should have that extra 4.5 feet. And it is not a huge change. It involves removing 1 lilac bush. And if the stone wall would look good on the inside edge after you make the curve, it can be replaced on the inside edge, or the stone wall could just be shortened. That's within the ability of the planning board to permit under the scenic roads regulations. Finally, well, I mean, I alluded to the financial value, I think, of this development. I think my point was, if you do 3 lots, larger lots, or even if it would be great if it could be 2, but if you do 3 larger lots, they're going to be more expensive homes. They do generate substantial property tax value for the town. At the same time, because of the type of home and the location, they tend to have less impact on the schools and everything else. People who buy homes that size sometimes send their kids to private schools or whatever. They don't have children, I don't know. But if you decide you don't want this type of development and you don't grant the permit, alternatives will be examined, and many of them are denser. And they would mean more homes, more impact on every aspect of what we've talked about today, including the driveway. So, you know, I think that the point's been made by some of the members of the planning board, but the fact is everyone using this driveway has a right to use it to the full 30-foot width if they need to. They could decide that it needs to be paved, and they could pave it to the full width. And the developer and the owner of this property, who has ownership of the driveway and a right to use it, could also do that. What this permit does is it reduces the right to do that. And once it the only, large vacant land still left on this driveway is this big lot at the end. If you determine what's going to happen to that lot now, and you do it with a special permit, and you establish numerous special conditions about how wide the driveway, usable part of the driveway can be, you're protecting everybody into the future. And that's what I realize has been very difficult for everybody to see, but I think that's a primary reason I feel this is a good thing to do. The other primary reason is it creates fewer lots than other forms of development. You know, whether they're by right or they have to be by, authorization from the planning board through the subdivision control law, or whether they're through some kind of waiver of zoning bylaws, there are definitely more dense ways that you can develop this. This is 15 acres. So I again would urge the planning board to do the conservative thing here, to approve this permit, to decide what are appropriate conditions to impose to control future development on the site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the public hearing.
Can I make one comment?
Yes, sir.
It's a
Come
point
forward,
of- I
please.
know I've already spoken.
Come
It's
forward,
a
please.
point of information.
I just wanted to kind of follow up on a point that my neighbor, Dr. Bresnahan, raised, and I think he wasn't 100% clear about the opening on Hillside. The plan, I guess, requires the driveway to be flared a little bit, and it's not by much, it's by 4 or 5 feet on either side. Earlier when this process began, we contracted with a environmental scientist, Steve Ivas, and we submitted a 2.5-page document It was well-researched. In fact, it was only 2 pages. The third page, there was 2.5 pages, 2 pages of text and a half page of footnotes. It was I thought, a very thorough document. In that document, Steve Ivas said that, I'll tell you what he didn't say. He did not say that the widening of the driveway would negatively impact the 2 trees. One of the trees is a 100-year-old hickory, I believe, and the other tree is a 150 to 200-year-old elm. He didn't say that they would be negatively impacted. What he did say was they would be destroyed. And I think that if the board acquiesces to this proposal, they're basically acquiescing to the destruction of those 2 trees. And I think one of them is particularly significant because it dates from the time of Carolyn Bedell's house. Her house, I think, dates from 1813, and the tree was probably planted around that time. It's an American elm, they're rare and basically irreplaceable.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me do that.
All right, now we'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll start.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now,
All right, for the purposes of continuing with this process, I move that the Milton Planning Board approve the open space development special permit pursuant to the terms of Section 6M and Section 9C1 of the Milton zoning bylaw for 153, 155, 147 Hillside Street, subject to the conditions as...
Can you
What?
interrupt, please?
Yes?
There are about 4 pages that Mrs. Zinnes is going to read. 5 pages. This is going to take 10 minutes or so. So if we have your attention, Mrs. Zinnes.
Subject to the conditions as determined by the planning board in its written decision. So I would need that seconded before I continue.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Just said it again.
I said, I move that the Milton Planning Board approve the open space development special permit pursuant to the terms, no, we don't do all in favor yet. I move that the Milton Planning Board approve the open space development special permit pursuant to the terms of Section 6M and Section 9C1 of the Milton zoning bylaw for 153, 155, 147 Hillside Street, subject to the conditions as determined by the planning board in its written decision. We just need a second at this point.
Second.
Okay. I'm going to read the suggested conditions from the proponent. The planning board still has to discuss these conditions, but we need the motion on the table in order to be able to discuss the conditions. Condition number 1, development to be consistent with the plans filed with the planning board. This open space development is described in the following plans. Open Space Development Plan 153, 155, 157 Hillside Street, Milton, Massachusetts, by Robert E. Hannigan Associates, dated March 23, 2012, and updated on May 29, 2012, August 9, 2012, September 7, 2012, and October 8, 2012. Plan and Profile Open Space Development Plan 153, 155, 157 Hillside Street, Milton, Massachusetts, dated March 23, 2012, and updated on September 7, 2012, by Robert E. Hannigan Associates. Existing Plan of Land Open Space Development Plan 153, 155, 157 Hillside Street, Milton, Massachusetts, dated March 23, 2012, by Robert E. Hannigan Associates. Driveway Plan and Details Open Space Development Plan 153, 155, 157 Hillside Street, Milton, Massachusetts, dated March 23rd, by Robert E. Hannigan Associates, and Driveway and Improvement Plan, Open Space Development Plan, 153, 155, 157 Hillside Street, Milton, Massachusetts, dated October 8th, 2012, by Robert E. Hannigan Associates. 2. Utilities. All utilities shall be underground. 3 new fire hydrants will be installed along the major driveway in locations determined by the fire department and the DPW director. 3. Utility and access easement and covenant. There shall be a utility and access easement and covenant approved by the planning board, which shall impose exclusive responsibility and obligation on the owners of lots 1, 2, and 3 for proper maintenance and repair of the 15-foot wide major private driveway and utility easement depicted in the plans, beginning at the end of the existing driveway from Hillside Street, including snow plowing and all utilities. The covenant shall include additional language requiring owners of lots 1, 2, and 3 to contribute proportionately, with the existing property owners using the first part of the major private driveway to the proper maintenance and repair, including snow plowing of the first part of the major private driveway. Providing existing property owners elect to tie into the new water lines and utility lines, owners of the new lots shall share maintenance costs proportionately with all property owners using those water and utility lines. Otherwise, the new lot owners shall have exclusive responsibility for maintenance of the new water line and the new utility lines. Compliance of the owners of lots 1, 2, and 3 with the terms of the utility and access easement is a condition of the special permit. The owners shall pay assessments as provided in the utility access and covenant. If for any reason the utility and access easement and covenant provisions shall be inadequate to ensure proper maintenance and repair of the driveway and of the utilities, the owners of lots 1, 2, and 3 shall have an independent responsibility for such maintenance and repair. The utility access and covenant approved by the Milton Planning Board shall be recorded with the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds, and all deeds to the lots shown on the plans shall contain references by book and page to the utility and access easement and covenant. 4. Major private driveway shall not be a street and shall not be maintained by the town. The major private driveway shall not be a street or public way, and the landowners shall not petition the town for its acceptance as a street or public way. The town shall not accept the major private driveway as a street or public way and shall not provide snow plowing. Trash removal shall be negotiated with the Department of Public Works. Provision shall be made so unsightly or unsanitary conditions are not created. The Planning Board reserves authority to amend the special permit so as to remedy any unsightly or unsanitary conditions occurring at 153, 155, 157 Hillside Street on account of trash removal from the open space development. 5. Driveway visibility at night shall be ensured by the use of reflectors and unobtrusive lighting. Along the edges of the cleared area of the major private driveway, reflectors shall be strategically placed so as to provide a clear path for drivers in nighttime conditions. Reflectors shall be placed high enough and in double rows if necessary to ensure clear visibility in snowy winter conditions. Reflectors shall be placed upon natural features such as trees wherever possible. If markers or posts are required to place some of these reflectors, such posts shall be designed so as to be appropriate for a rural setting. If requested by those whose residences abut the major private driveway, additional lighting at driveways to houses shall be provided for increased visibility. Such lighting shall be designed so as to provide adequate light while still appearing inconspicuous during the day in order to maintain the present appearance of the driveway. 6. Standards for construction and materials for the major private driveway and the underground utilities. Driveway construction shall conform to the plan to be a 12-foot wide paved driveway as built within the existing 30-foot right-of-way, and shall be a 12-foot paved driveway as built within a 15-foot access and utility easement, beginning with a cul-de-sac at the end of the existing driveway, all as depicted in the plans. The area along the edge of the paved driveway surface shall be cleared to a total width of 20 feet along the first part of the major private driveway leading to the cul-de-sac, as depicted in the plans, except along the driveway frontage for 147 Hillside Street, currently owned by the McDonoughs, where cleared width can be 14 feet. Along the second part of the major private driveway after the cul-de-sac, the area along the edge of the paved driveway surface shall be cleared to a width of 15 feet. The unpaved cleared surface shall be covered by grass pave, a wire mesh covering which allows grass to grow through, allows water to be absorbed, and provides a surface that vehicles can travel over. The major private driveway need not be built to Mass Highway Standard specifications for highways and bridges, latest edition, as applicable, including substitutes and additions, and need not exceed the requirements relating to standards for public streets in the town. Standards for water pipes, fittings, and installation shall be as specified by the water and sewer departments, but need not exceed what would be required in a public street. Standards for newly installed underground utilities shall meet the usual standards as if they were a public street, including a concrete cap for electric conduits beneath the road surface. If required by the fire department, there shall be additional gravel or grass paved pullouts along the sides of the major driveway to ensure safe passage of public safety vehicles. Any pullouts required by the fire department shall be depicted on a plan which has been approved by the fire department and filed with the town. 7. Construction of buildings. Construction of buildings shall be confined within the building envelope shown on the plans. All dwellings shall be furnished with perimeter foundation drains as necessary, and it shall be the responsibility and obligation of the homeowners to keep these drains operational. 8. Landscaping and tree cutting. The unnecessary destruction of trees and natural features shall be avoided. Houses shall be appropriately landscaped so as to blend in with the wooded characteristics of the site. During driveway excavation work, the applicant shall retain the services of a certified arborist to advise as to best practices to be followed so as to minimize injury to tree roots. 9. Conservation Commission requirements. All work in the open space development shall comply with any and all requirements that may be imposed by the Milton Conservation Commission in an order of conditions. 10. Construction management. A construction management plan shall be prepared by the applicant in consultation with the DPW director and the town engineer. Included in the construction management plan shall be the following provisions. No material shall be stockpiled at any time along the existing driveway. All materials shall be stockpiled in the area to be developed at the end of the existing driveway, beyond existing residences, and outside the wetlands buffer area. A construction schedule and method for the installation of utilities and resurfacing of the driveway shall be prepared and made available to all property owners with deeded easement rights to use the driveway, as well as to the police and fire department. The construction schedule will provide notice at least 24 hours in advance of any need to block access to the driveway during the day to all those property owners with deeded easement rights to use the driveway, as well as to the police and fire department. At no time during construction shall the driveway access for the Corliss, 151 Hillside Street, and Jepson, 165 Hillside Street, residents be blocked overnight, as each household uses this driveway for primary access to Hillside Street. Techniques shall be utilized to minimize dust during driveway excavation. Construction vehicles shall be parked at night in the area at the end of the existing driveway and outside the wetlands buffer area. The DPW director and Milton Police Department shall be provided with a 24-hour name and telephone number for construction management. 11. Timing and completion of driveway construction. The laying of new pipes and resurfacing of the driveway shall occur first in the existing driveway and then for the extension of the driveway in order to minimize interference with neighbors' use of the driveway. 12. Connections to new water lines and utility lines. At the start of construction, residents with a right to use the driveway will be provided with a written schedule for installation of new water and utility lines under the driveway. If neighbors who use the existing private utility lines and water pipes intend to connect to the new water line and utility lines at a later time, each must provide the applicant with written notice that a stub-off connection is requested at their property line. If neighbors wish to have such connection work completed by the applicant's contractor, then arrangements must be made with the applicant for payment for such work. In either case, anyone connecting to the new lines will be required to share the burden of future maintenance costs with all other users. Connection work must be approved by the applicant initially, and then once lots 1, 2, and 3 are sold, by the owners of those lots, in order to assure that the new lines are not damaged when new connections are made. 13, time limits for completion of open space development project. The major private driveway and installation of utilities shall be completed within 3 years of the date of final approval of this special permit. Construction shall be completed on all lots within 6 years of the date of final approval of this permit. In the event of an appeal of this permit, all time limits shall be told. Mr. Chairman, those are the conditions as presented by the applicant for the board to discuss.
Thank you. So, where do you want to start?
Do we have these plans here for us?
I probably have all of them.
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah, we can pull them out if we need to.
You have them somewhere good.
Freddie, I know you were worried about the width of the roads, so we might want to start with there.
There are a lot of numbers here. I would want to see these plans before I say yes or no.
Let me check and see what I've got.
And I see some contradictory things coming, so here, one part here, under utility and access easement,
Yeah,
and covenant, the third line down, a 15-foot wide major private driveway. Then further on it mentions a 12-foot paved.
yep. Yeah, I agree,
And
we need to
14, so
clarify, we need to clarify that and make our decision as to what we want to. Yes, but it's ultimately our decision as to the width we want. So they proposed that 20-foot wide, they proposed a 12-foot paved, but cleared to 20 feet wide
That's right.
with that green
But there's
pave.
14 mentioned, 15 mentioned.
So we need to,
And we're gonna vote on this tonight?
we've closed the public hearing. The applicant has requested that we vote on it tonight, but we don't. You know, we've closed the public hearing, so we would no longer take testimony, but we need to deliberate, so.
This, is this here plan, 153 or 155, or what is it?
They're all,
There's 153, there's 155 and 157 Hillside.
They're shown on one
that's
plan.
lots 1, 2, and 3.
My very good friend Robert Hannigan does a good job, but, I see different measurements here, but okay.
Can you explain to me again, if they wanted to build one house back here, they can come in on that private driveway and we have no say on that?
Yes, because the planning board doesn't have a jurisdiction over a single building lot,
That's right.
so. They would simply, as with any single building lot, they would submit plans to the building department. The building department would review those plans, it would never come before us. So-
Approval not required.
It's not even that, it's a single
But,
build requirement. We never see, I mean, with an approval not required, which is a method of subdividing land that meets certain conditions, it comes before us. We don't see the single building lots.
Well, this is,
What are the, educate me a little bit, what are the bylaws surrounding a single-family lot that comes off a private drive that's over 650 feet long?
I don't think there are any. So, the single-family lot would be determined by the district
Building
that it's
envelope.
in, yeah.
you can put the house any place you want.
Well, yeah, it starts,
Okay.
well, the setbacks, they have
Setbacks,
setbacks, yeah.
But you still don't have frontage.
They have frontage on Ford Ranch Road. We'd
Okay.
have to go back and add it up to make sure that it's right, but it's already an existing lot with an existing driveway. You know, it's grandfathered in from when it was first.
Don't you have to come over that frontage to access your lot?
But I
think
think
you
it's
have to
already
come-
grandfathered in, is my point, is it's
But-
an existing lot, we're not
Well,
talking about a
Someone's
new
gonna build a
lot.
bridge across the,
No, it's an existing lot with a driveway.
So you're saying it's an existing grandfather in, it's an existing lot with use of
We've
the
come
private
across,
drive?
yeah, come across a couple of these lots where they're already there, they were there before zoning took place. It's got a driveway, it is an existing building lot.
you're saying they get the frontage from Ford Ranch Road?
Well, I
I'm
think-
saying it doesn't actually need frontage because, you know, they probably have frontage on Ford Ranch Road, but I'm saying it doesn't need frontage because it's pre-existing. We're not talking about, if we're talking about it as a single building lot, a single-family building lot, it is a pre-existing lot with access over that driveway.
And when we're talking about a single-family lot, are we talking about 1, 2, and 3
No, it would be,
exclusive of Lot A?
now that's actually an interesting question,
Is Lot A already Lot A on its own?
because the applicant, I'd have to go back through the file, but the applicant did present some information on the history of Lot A and the A and R.
I thought
And I haven't
early on
looked-
it was saying Lot A is good to go as is.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at that in a while,
It doesn't
Which-
but I
exist.
think you may be
which would be-
right.
Open permit.
Lot A is good to go on its own per what you just described.
So you would have two lots there, you'd have Lot A, and then you'd have the
Yeah, the
combined lot
combined
one,
lot.
2, and 3. So potentially
Or
two single-family homes.
The only
going
question
there.
beyond that is Lot A deeded as Lot A presently? Or is it part of this bigger lot?
Without consideration of open space development,
Hmm,
we'd have to look.
well, we could probably ask.
We could probably ask too. Yes, I see Marion's
Is
hand.
Lot A already Lot A? Or is it part of this single?
Lot A is a combination of 3 separate lots, or it's most of 3 separate. It's a lot that can be created that would qualify as an A&R lot. The back lot, which is the original lot, is, qualifies by virtue of its frontage on Fort Ranch.
So in fact, there are two distinct things right now, and I understand what you said about Lot A being a combination, but Lot A, the perimeter I see of Lot A here right now exists exclusive of this back lot that includes 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, so potentially, theoretically, the existing area could give rise to 2 A&R lots.
One on A and one on the back lot.
Correct.
Okay, so that's two
That hasn't been
houses.
brought to the planning board and whatever, but it's what our engineer was able to show us.
Can I continue to ask Marion questions?
It's up
Is
to
that,
you.
I don't know if that's the public.
Go ahead.
We're allowed to ask for information.
When you came here looking to get 3 lots here, or you, I say you, or the people, the folks that you represent, was it your eventual intention to then, at some point in time, look to build on Lot A?
Well, when we first came to you, Lot A was part of the 3 lots. That was all, it was all included. What we did in the middle of the summer was to draw,
Marion, you need to come up, they're not picking you up on the microphone.
what we did in the middle of the summer was to draw that lot with the intention of offering it, and we did offer it to neighbors because we thought they might like it. We had hoped it would be something they would like, that they would purchase it in order to achieve a certain amount of control over the lot area that's just adjacent to those 2 properties. So instead of making part of the open space development a piece of a lot, a piece of land that was between 2 existing homes, we drew a plan taking that out and leaving that area as a separate area. And nobody has come to us to say they want to buy it, although I was told in August that there was still a possibility that there might be interest in doing that.
A deed exists, and I'm probably reiterating some of the same stuff I've just asked you, but a deed exists for Lot A.
No, a deed exists for the components of Lot A,
Okay. Again, exclusive of this back lot.
correct.
A deed exists for this back lot.
There are separate deeds for the one on Ford Ranch Road and then for the other area that's the back lot.
So maybe this is a lot that's deeded, and then
Yep.
the rest of it's a second lot that's deeded.
Yeah, it's connected. We believe that you could, you know,
I guess the only
No,
thing we
the-
don't see here is where the differentiation on the Ford,
I mean, what I have to say is, if you were going to do this,
Yeah.
the 2 A&R lots or some variation thereof, you might not draw the lot lines exactly the way they're drawn for the open
Sure.
space development.
I-
What
I-
is apparent is that there are 2 pieces of frontage on Ford Ranch Road that are of adequate length to qualify as frontage. And that they are connected in a way that would make them usable for these lots as frontage.
here.
That's that,
And here.
and the other one is that.
What I guess, and this is probably like late in the game to be asking this, but I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
Why you didn't come forward with plans to build 1, 2, 3, 4 homes?
Well, I believe, I don't represent the owners, the Fandries. I have not been involved in what went on from 2005, shows I'm getting old, 2005 to when this proposal came forward. In fact, I wasn't even involved in this proposal until it was partway through the Conservation Commission. So I only know by hearsay or second comments that there was discussion of doing 4 rather than 3 lots.
There was discussion.
That the owners
Being just what we talked about. 1, 2,
talked
3,
about
and
doing
4.
4 lots.
You represent the developer?
I represent the developer who has a purchase and sale agreement now to purchase the property.
Let me ask you an off-the-wall question here. How come the developer or the owner never has attended any, or I don't realize that they've attended any of these meetings?
They did attend the Conservation Commission hearings for a while, and their wish was, the developer wished me to represent him because he felt that it, that he was.
But you realize, my question, we see lawyers.
If you wanted him to be here, he could be here.
And they usually show up with their clients, but I just.
Yeah, I know, I agree with that, although everybody knows him because he lives in the neighborhood, and I think he felt upset by some of the comments that were made and felt it would be better for me to represent him, that he might become upset. Whatever, that was, and naturally I will do as my client requests, so I have appeared for him.
Understand.
And for the owners, their desire at this point seems to be to have the developer answer all questions, carry on negotiations. They don't want to be directly involved.
Okay, Mike?
Just a question.
Go ahead.
So Marion, right now, Todd Hamilton can get 2 lots. A&R, approval not required.
Yes, that's what we believe to be true. We haven't actually brought it to the planning board to see what they would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
but-
I can't help but step in again on that question. You kind of inferred earlier that even if we allowed these 3 lots here, that it still may be sold as 2 lots. You said there were certain people that
Yeah, I
might be
would go
interested in.
further than inferring it. The developer has had contact now from 2 buyers who are interested in having a horse. They like the property because they want their horse, to have a horse or horses up there. One buyer has been for a number of months looking at it and is still looking at it, seriously, and that would be to purchase 2 lots, possibly. It's an expensive proposition for a buyer. It's taking some time for them to work out whether they can actually do it, but they really want to do it, and they are local. So is the other buyer who's interested in having a lot where they could have a horse. So all I can tell you is there are buyers who are interested in doing this, and there's a buyer who wants to buy 2 lots. They want to have that much space. But I can't come to you today and say there's a purchase and sale agreement that's been signed and that's going to happen for sure. And in fact, I think it will take several months to determine whether that first buyer is actually going to be able to do it. But this is someone who has been interested since June and has been talking to the developer since June. Initially, they contacted me. I put them in touch with the developer. They are very genuinely interested in the property.
They wouldn't be buying directly off the owner, they'd be buying through the developer.
It has to do with the nature of the purchase and sale agreement, and, what will happen is that would be executed, and then the purchase would actually be from the developer.
Okay, Mike? Okay. Thank you, Marion. Mr. Whiteside, do you wish to say something?
I want to discuss Lot A just briefly.
Pardon me?
Lot A is it doesn't currently exist. It appears on the plan as a 4th lot. It's not part of the open space subdivision, but it is a 4th lot. So it is actually a 4-lot. You're right, they have to come and get an A&R endorsement because it isn't 4 acres in size, so it can't be part of the open space special permit, but it doesn't exist anywhere other than on this plan. And you can't approve it as part of an open space permit because it's not a 4-acre lot.
Thank you, Mr. Whiteside.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Question?
And you can't approve it as an A&R either.
When you
raising of the hands is,
You know, I very much understand the neighborhood's concerns with this. I like the look of the current driveway. I like the overall feel of the rural aspect of this area. But in considering the public good, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate momentarily, which is we have to look at, obviously, the good to the neighborhood. But we also have to look to the public good of the town, that really is the difference between
is, what if the headlights go out in your car, you don't have, and you don't know where you are?
So
I don't
this-
mean to talk to you.
Well, maybe you could ask these
You-
folks,
you
because
can
they may
tell
have run
how-
into this situation.
I get wrapped up in it, believe me, personally.
So the lighting's under condition 5, so let's assume there are nothing else on condition 2, and we can take up the lighting under condition 5. Under condition 3, the utility and access easement and covenant. So we've got your question, Bernie, on the 15-foot wide major private driveway at this point. How do you want to handle the width of the driveway?
I'm just gonna abstain on this stuff. I've made up my mind because there is no public good and the people have raised their hands and said that they don't.
Mr. Chairman, how would you like to handle this? We can continue to go through this, you can call for a vote.
We can call for the vote, and then if Mr. Lynch maintains his position, there's no sense in going any further. Unless we can try to change his mind, but I don't think we can change his mind.
When I saw all those hands go up, you know,
I
some people don't like to
understand.
speak in public.
I
And not
concur.
everyone has spoken, but when I saw all those hands go up, I don't know if the camera shined on them to see the people, so the people at home could see them.
Bernie, I want to make it very clear, I completely respect your position, but I don't
Good.
want to put all of us through going through this point by point if you know how you're going to vote. That's not
I'm
fair to
gonna
the
be
people who are
known
waiting.
For weeks, I'm gonna vote.
Then in that case, we should call for the vote.
Well, you want,
No,
I
no,
said,
no,
I'm not gonna say yes or no, you decide, or the chairman decides if you wanna go to this.
I think it's up to the chairman.
If we just do it like this, and it seems to me that's gonna be the outcome, but if we just terminate it right now, we give these people no inclination of what they might come back with, and we might respect more than this. So,
So you would like us to identify our concerns? Because I do have a few, I mean, the problem is I actually have a few concerns with what's written, and I think Mike indicated that he had some concerns as well with some of the conditions.
I have significant
And so-
concerns, including lack of any street lighting.
Well, then, Mr. Chairman, I think you should
But,
identify your concerns.
I have concerns about many of these issues, but there's no sense in proceeding if we know we're going nowhere.
Well, if they come back, if we vote no,
Yes, if we vote no.
they can't represent this, they'll have to come back with a subdivision.
They would come back, well, they wouldn't necessarily, they would come back
Anything
with
we
whatever
comment-
plan they
Right,
wish
I
to
mean,
come back
it's
with.
gonna be much
yes.
different.
It would be different.
50-foot
yes.
layout,
Unless the applicant.
sidewalk, concrete sidewalks
I
on
mean,
one
if they,
side.
if they came back with an open, what's the term?
Unless the applicant wished to.
Open space development, they could come back with open space
They could
development.
come back with an open space
But
development
that would
that is
take a
different.
process, well, that would take a process again, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, they come back and they say, well, our road says it's still 12 feet wide, we'll say, well, no, you can't have 12 feet wide.
No, they would,
it's 16.
I believe, and
I mean-
I'm willing to be corrected, but I believe they would have to come back with a significantly different open space
Okay,
development.
yeah.
They couldn't just simply represent the same
But I think
plan.
what Ed was getting at is, it would teach them something by going through these items. But I don't know if that's all that necessary.
Well,
Is it, what did I interpret, do you think, what he's getting at? I mean,
I think so, is that.
I thought that's what you were getting at for a
Yeah.
minute there, but then you decided that we could just, which is fine.
Someone brought up.
I'd like to know if the attorney for the applicant would like to withdraw the application.
Well, I don't believe so. I think the applicant would prefer that you vote up or down and that he can decide whether he wants to appeal. I just want to say on the driveway width, you know, I have given you the suggested list of conditions. They are not our conditions, and that's part of your decision. I realize you've already indicated you're not going to vote for it, one of you, so, you know, you don't have enough votes, but it is useful to go through this.
again, I don't know how much would be accomplished though, because if we say a 20-foot road or this or that, in fact, we know where this is headed tonight. If you came back, as the planning board, I think we're trying to do the best for safety, for lighting, for this or that, while still trying to understand what the public wants. So I understand what you're getting at. Go to a 30-foot wide road, sure, I'll go 30-foot, we'll put 3 houses. But the people don't want 30 feet. If something should happen, they don't want 30-foot paved road, but that would be the safest thing. So we could give you parameters, but the parameters in my mind would still work around the particular neighborhood and the particulars of the neighborhood. So I don't know how much you gain by what we tell you tonight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We say put streetlights, but
But
yet the next time you come back, well, the neighbors don't want streetlights.
Yeah.
Well, is it absolutely necessary? No, they don't have streetlights.
Well, yes, I mean, that's what the planning board has to decide.
Right.
The applicant is not saying that he will not put streetlights.
Right.
I think I understand that.
This is an attempt to meet the concerns of the neighbors, create the safe conditions, and give you a proposal for what
Right.
the cost. That's, I just want to say.
No, that's understood. And I guess the question then, Bertie, since you've made your feelings clear, are there conditions under which you would change your vote, under which you would approve this? Or are you satisfied that, because if there are, then we should put them in there. If you are satisfied, if there are not, that is
You
fine.
have to convince these 35 people that raise their hands. If you present something to them that they like it and they don't raise their hands, I could go for it. But these people have spoken.
But
They
Bernie,
have
he's
spoken.
still, and with all due respect,
And we're not hurting the applicant.
that's
He's
a good
got-
point. That's a
He's
good
Yes.
got
point.
at least two A&Rs.
But just for discussion's sake, and with all due respect, it is sometimes, maybe the lawyers will chime in, it is sometimes the purpose of the law to protect the
That's right.
individual, the minority. I mean, everybody in town might say something's wrong, but if it's 100% by the law, then a man has a right to do it. So, I understand what you're saying, and I agree that you would certainly hope that in a good deal, everybody comes to the table and decides this is the best for everybody. And that's certainly not happening here. But I don't think we can totally rely on the fact that people just don't like it.
They've expressed why they don't like it. They've showed pictures of you could drive a steamboat down this Ford
But
Ranch Road.
that's happened with or without this
And
development.
what is this here? Is this the sinkhole that they're referring to?
But with all due respect, Bernie, that was presented by people who are not in favor of putting the bridge on Forge Ranch Road. We've actually got two groups of people here, one of whom are very concerned about the thought of the driveway being used for access, and the other is very concerned about the thought of using Ford Ranch Road
Sure.
as the access.
Absolutely.
We're not gonna be able to make
Well,
both of them
before us
happy.
is this application to,
The only thing we can vote on is what's before us. We can't act,
you
we
made a
cannot.
motion.
Yes, I made the motion. We can't actually say, go and, come back and bring us something that has the, bridge over Ford Ranch Road. That's not within our.
I don't know if he's
Right.
precluded from coming back. I don't know if there's a 2-year waiting period like on most things, but the fact remains is that, here we go. I'm ready for vote.
Mrs. McGetrick, could you answer the question about if this is denied, what the implications are coming forward again?
Presumably she wants.
My understanding is that if we were to present the same application to the board again, we would have to wait 2 years. If we were to present a different application, I suppose the planning board would have to decide if it's different enough that we could, there are all variety of possible proposals that could be brought to the board. Some of them could be brought to the board, I suppose, while an appeal is being conducted. I mean, there are all kinds of possibilities.
Thank you, Mary. Well, I see no point now of going further. Do you wish to call?
I'll
the
call
vote?
for the vote.
Mary? Okay, all in favor of the proposal before us, please indicate by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. All opposed?
The motion fails.
Thank you.
15 minutes.
That was one of the criteria right in here, you don't get your seat back.
Do we need Bill for that? 'Cause I
No,
noticed-
no,
Okay, 'cause I
no,
noticed,
no.
Shay's been waiting for us.
Okay.
And are we doing this?
No,
The executive
no,
session.
we're going to do that next time.
But I'll know so he posts it properly.
Okay, we've done.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're still meeting. We're still meeting, yes, please.
Be good, blue, winners, get out.
All right.
All right.
Yo! That's a good trick. Yeah.
St. Elizabeth's, Dr. Shea, why not come up and tell us all about it?
Come on up, Doc.
Well, I don't know, I'm only here.
We want to actually-
for this meeting at all.
You're just here as an observer?
I'm just here as an observer, not knowing exactly.
Oh, I thought you had a presentation for us, okay.
Well, my understanding is at the meeting between you, Mr. Clark, my understanding is that at a meeting between you, Mr. Clark, and the, Mr. Clark is upstairs in the, this is all hearsay, but you were there. Ah, so Mr. Hurley was there also. Okay, and the building has been raised, and it's my understanding that there was some expression that that as a consequence of your prior dealings with the planning board, you prefer not to ever have further dealings with the planning board.
Come on, Rich. I was just amazed sitting here listening to the different approach to something like this. I just was I was just flabbergasted listening to what transpired. But
Did you raise your hand?
no, I didn't because
You're right, I did not see you
I
raise your
didn't
hand.
know enough about it. Although my daughter lives on Fort Ranch Road,
Was it?
and she was not able to be here tonight. But I did not. I have not participated in knowledge of it, so I didn't vote yes or no.
All right. So you've got some planning to do.
Well, I don't think so,
don't think
Mr.
so?
Chairman, no. From what I can gather, first of all, the meeting that, I was under the same impression that you were, that we were gonna meet with the planning board, et cetera, but Mr. Clark set me straight the other day when I went to his office and gave me some valuable time and told me that when there's a buyer, that at that time, maybe you could meet with the planning board, et cetera, and I don't know why, but that was their suggestion. I think that St. Elizabeth has taken the great words of the chairman of the planning board one night who said, you know, why don't you just put 6 or 5 single-family homes there and forget about it? So I think that's the approach they're taking, the words of the chairman.
Well, you remember when I said that you're going to have to get curb cuts from the state on that state highway for your 3 lots facing Route 28. And, because, the frontage is supposed to be what you gain your access from, and obviously if there's a curb there. So you've got issues, you've got issues.
I'm not knowledgeable, that's not my field, I'm not knowledgeable. The only thing that I have really been upset by personally was the fact that since being involved with the planning board, a lot of people do not know all the facts out there, and the Archdiocese has taken some real hits from comments from, surprisingly, members of the town.
And what facts would you like to apprise the town of?
Well, they've taken an awful pasting from taking down the building by people who don't know just what transpired, and I'm not so sure that the planning board even knows that, but I don't think it was fair for anybody to ask the parishioners of St. Elizabeth to pay to have that house restored, if it could have been restored even. I don't think it's a responsibility to make somebody pay in the vicinity of $200,000 to $300,000.
Even when you give them a zoning incentive to do so?
Well, no, because that money, anybody who buys that property and has to spend $200,000 to $300,000 is going to take that off the sales price. So the losers, St. Elizabeth and the parishioners, who have been, by the way, that building was really, I don't want to use the word condemned, because if it was condemned, the town or St. Elizabeth was going to have to take it down. So the red X was asked not to be put on there because we didn't want the town to have to spend the money and take it down, or the parishioners of St. Elizabeth. So what was said was, you cannot go in there, you cannot use it. My firemen are not allowed to go in there upon a fire. They're not allowed to. So we couldn't use it, and as a result of not being able to use it, St. Elizabeth's parishioners had to pay the town over the last 3 years while it was for sale over $17,000 in taxes. Well, we just can't keep doing that. No one can, you can't ask anybody to keep doing that. Why
But
should they
isn't the
have?
reason you have an abatement process if you think you're being overtaxed? I mean, if you don't think it's worth it, you go and ask for an abatement.
Well, maybe they did. I don't know, but I do know that the money was given to the town or paid to the town, not only the last 3 years while it was for sale, 17,000, but it goes back since we couldn't.
But you
nobody could
remember
go in.
that the historic preservation bylaw was basically giving you extra building because we recognized that you would have to spend some money to restore the cottage. So what we attempted to do there was to give you a financial incentive to restore the cottage and come out whole.
Well, maybe you thought it was a financial incentive, but there was nobody coming forward to buy the property to do that.
But you remember the zoning was pulled at your request, so without zoning in place, it's pretty hard to market property on the sort of zone they would have had if you'd let the zoning go forward.
I don't believe so. You're not out there getting the people who are bidding for the property. There wasn't any, we had that for sale a long time, and no one was going to put the money up to repair a building that engineers and architects say it can't be repaired. Now, that can be debated. Maybe that architect and that engineer, somebody else might have said differently, but we had to pay a lot of money. St. Elizabeth's had to pay a lot of money to get an architect and an engineer to come in and say whatever they said, and what they said was, and we gave you the report, it was written out, we submitted a report to the planning board and to Mr. Clark and to Mr. Prondak. They got the report that it was not restorable, etc. We even bowed down to the Historical Society and let them come in with a contractor who said it was going to cost between, and the term by the Historical Society was very small amount of money but that small amount of money was between $75,000 and $100,000 to shore it up so that you could invest the money and repair it. So anybody that's offering money for the property is gonna take that right off the top. That's common sense. Common sense. And if you recall, the plan had nice green frontage in the front. They were gonna take the granite and make a wall
You're
around.
talking about the, how many units was it, 12?
12.
Well, they wanted 12, but then it came down to 10, 2 of which had to be affordable. Now we have the property at.
Who
two-
said they had to be affordable?
A member of the,
No, that was in the original citizens petition that was proposed by St. Elizabeth's.
no, what they said, what that petition said, and I wasn't involved with that, but that petition said that they were hoping that the people who would buy the condos would be an opportunity for teachers, firemen, and, okay? Now, if you call them qualifying for affordable, then that's your business, but
No, I'm sorry, and I don't want to spin this out longer than we need
exactly.
to, but the original citizens petition, the intent may have been, we want firemen, teachers, et cetera, but the way that petition was actually written was to require that it be, or at least portions of it be, workforce housing.
But that petition, when I saw it anyway, immediately after, it was withdrawn, if you recall.
I know,
Okay.
and we worked with you to do that, and so we come, but I just
Withdrawn.
wanna make it clear that the original requirement for affordable, whether it was intended to be that or not, was in that original citizens petition.
Okay, well, as you know, when people buy property that's gonna be affordable, that land is worth nothing to them.
Well,
So that was deducted, so before you know it, with that plan, it wasn't reasonable, so.
Okay, but it was your plan that you're talking that wasn't reasonable, because our plan was something else.
But no.
That was you had the workforce housing plan for 10 units, and we had the historical preservation for 8.
Yeah.
8, giving you 2 extra units to restore the house with. And you could have done it, but you didn't.
Well, no. Well, anyway, I'm just telling you,
All
they're
right.
taking your advice.
Thank
They
you.
they are going to market, and they are, market the property for single-family homes.
And
That's
it-
what the Archdiocese is doing. But the Archdiocese has taken a going over because people really don't know all the facts. They don't.
If I could just ask one question, I know we had the information, I can't remember, how many parcels actually exist?
How many parcels?
Yeah, so of the property, it's.
2, I think.
It's 2, so you're wanting to build 6 single-family
Right.
homes on the 2
Well,
parcels?
Mr. Clark was involved with that, with
You'll
you
be,
people.
you'll
5
be,
or 6.
you'll be coming to us with your plan, and we will continue this edifying discussion.
You would have to come to us under the subdivision control act.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if I will be here, but whoever,
Oh, I bet you'll be here.
no, whoever buys the property, will, I'm sure, be in front of you, I guess. But I just know that nobody came forward from the Historical Society to buy the property, to move the building. I, at one planning board meeting, spoke to the members of the Historical Society and suggested, why don't you have a big fundraiser and either restore it or move it? And it was like, are you serious? Why should we do that when they want St. Elizabeth parishioners to pay to have it restored?
Well, I think that offering you 2 additional lots to restore the cottage with was not a ungenerous offer, and I think, I for one am sorry you didn't take us up on
Does
that.
the offer still stand?
Well, unfortunately, restoring the cottage now, we would have to.
Well, they could make a contribution to plant 15 trees or something,
You mean like cutting down the black oak?
No.
They could build a
If you
modern
recall,
stone cottage.
We had that whole corner gonna be kept green. That whole corner was gonna be kept green.
Except for the driveway
and
coming
the
through it.
granite.
And the parking lot.
And the parking lot, and all the shiny cars. parked in the parking, or non-shiny, depending on
The only neighbor or et cetera that came forward to object to that plan was Ms. Ennis, and I'm not so sure she really objected to it.
I didn't actually object to the plan. I worked with you as much as I could to
Right. Well,
bring that legislation
to tell you the
forward.
truth.
And I have to say that I'm deeply disappointed that when it came to the point of the public hearing, you and Mr. Rosito, you meaning the parish, and Mr. Rosito just dropped out of the process. We held a public hearing. Did we hold 2 nights of the public hearing? And nobody showed up
I'm
from
sorry,
the church to
I
discuss
did
it.
not miss one.
No, the public hearing,
On
not
the
the
zoning,
discussion.
the zoning public
Prior to town
hearing.
meeting, we have to hold a public hearing, which we did. Nobody showed up to discuss that article the first night, so we put it on for another night. We asked Mr. Clark to make sure that he called everybody. He told us that Mr. Rosito was not going to show up. And quite frankly, I am disappointed that at the amount of time that the board took to work with you to come up with a proposal for town meeting, that nobody showed up to present the very objections that you're presenting now.
Well, I was not, me personally was never informed.
Well, Mr. Clark informed us that he had spoken to Mr. Rosito and to Father Walsh's office, and I don't know who he spoke to, and that nobody was available to talk to us. And I am disappointed that you are now trying to place some sort of blame on us.
No,
when we
I'm
did our
not
best
putting any
to help.
blame on you. I'm telling you that they're going to go with what the chairman said. Why not just go with the?
Fantastic.
All right.
That's what you suggested.
Okay, this is, we've reached the magical hour of 10 o'clock. Thank you for, you have been a real trooper. You got here at 7:15 and you've been here ever since.
Yes, because on your schedule that you put out, it was going to be at 7:45 that you would be talking about reusage. And I just came to hear what you were going to say. I didn't call the meeting.
If you look at our official agenda, it actually was listed after the Hillside Street matter,
At 7:45.
which was at 7:45.
Yeah, the 333 Hillside was at 7:45, but it got continued.
Mr. Chairman, before we let Dr. Richard Shea go,
Yeah.
can we give him, so he can get to the Archdiocese, some direction?
Well, what they're gonna try and do is come up with they're gonna try and sell it for a conventional subdivision.
But we don't
Right?
want that, do we?
Yeah, I think
We
that,
don't want that.
Well,
that was what you suggested.
unless someone has a better idea,
Rezone it, Alvin. Put-
rezone it for
one-
what?
What are you gonna rezone?
Residents,
For apartments?
sure. why not?
I mean, remember our spot zoning discussion?
Condos.
This would be real spot zoning.
It would, we'd have to,
I don't think
don't
he
think
meant,
they're
I don't think he
interested.
meant apartments. I don't think he meant
do you
apartments.
mean apartments?
He meant condos.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Okay,
sure he did.
we will give this further thought.
Okay,
We look forward to whatever
And we,
comes in front of
and we
us.
look forward to continued,
You're one of our favorite.
right,
attendees.
exactly.
I don't want to be one of
You
you.
have been sticking around from 7:15 to 10 o'clock.
But you know, we'll say this, I was really impressed with the planning board tonight. And I'm thinking, geez, is that the same planning board? And then I thought, you know what? It's
Yeah, let's
not.
just sit back there, that's all.
It's not.
Well,
Oh, boy, John, tell him.
okay.
Tell him.
Now, I think that we're going to discuss visioning next
Mixing.
meeting.
Definitely.
And
Also,
remote participation
Next
next
meeting, and we're not having executive
I
session.
move we adjourn.
That's, we have a second, all in favor? Aye.
Michael,